Yo, everybody. Hello, my name is Dylan Spalding. I am the owner, the host of Spalding Media Network. We have ourselves a new show. We're back. Spalding Media Network is back on action. Obviously, we had a few pieces of content coming out over the last few weeks with the Formula E race that we were at in Portland. So a lot of our interviews were out on on our YouTube page. So definitely go check those out. Obviously, had some good content there. With that being said, we are here for the newest show, and it is Campus Chronicles. We're going to be covering college football all season with my good friend Chris Everidge. Chris, welcome on to the show, man. Happy to have you on. Obviously, as everybody could see, we got the SEC on tap today.
Yes,
So
sir.
we're going to talk a little bit about some SEC football, some down south football, and discuss who is going to be our top team in this conference. It's obviously a very wide conference in regards to the talent of teams. As you kind of mentioned prior to us getting on, this is a conference that is going to be very much NFL light, with a lot of guys probably going to get drafted from almost all 16. I don't know. There may be one or two that may not get many draft picks, but uh, it's gonna be pretty good. It's gonna be fun to get to talk a little bit about this, and excited to have you on.
Yeah, I mean, it is probably the closest thing to the NFL. Maybe the Big Ten, just because Big Ten more of defense, smash mouth, like offensive lineman, defensive lineman kind of thing. But the SEC, especially this year with Texas and Oklahoma, pretty much every single week you're going to have a fantastic game, and not just a fantastic game. You're going to have multiple fantastic games every week. You're going to have Alabama, LSU, and then 3 hours later, you're going to have Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Georgia, Texas that same evening. So there's this. The SEC is so exciting this year.
Absolutely. And some teams have more of a gauntlet than others, and that will reflect our rankings. I didn't do more so the predictions for the standings. I may end up doing them after the fact here. Chris, you ended up deciding to go with the records, so I'll allow you to kind of provide the records of what you predicted for each of the teams.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, obviously, I kind of went more with just looking off their schedules based off of my prior knowledge of these teams. So, uh, with that being said, I guess let's begin our rankings here for the SEC. For one, how do you feel like the SEC is going to play out now with Oklahoma and Texas added into the mix? Both teams are very much major programs in the collegiate football realm, and I think they're going to definitely add a lot of value to this conference. Obviously, not only do you get the rivalry with both teams, which is going to be a huge rivalry. You add that with like Georgia and Florida, which is obviously the other big uh, neutral site rivalry in the conference. So, just talk a little bit about how big the Texas and Oklahoma additions are here to the SEC and how that will shape up, I think, the season. You kind of touched base on it a little bit, but just kind of get into a little bit more depth in regards to the new additions.
Yeah, I think especially with the SEC, your new additions are at the top. Like Texas and Oklahoma come in and they're obvious, playoff potential kind of teams.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that with other conferences like the ACC, for example. You have Arizona State, you have Stanford. They come in and they're kind of the bottom of the conference. Same with Cincinnati, BYU, Houston, and the Big 12. They're kind of the bottom of that conference. You don't have that with the SEC and with the Big 10. Like, Oregon comes in and they're actually second favorite to win the Big 10. Texas, Oklahoma, they come in and they are great teams. They're in that top tier. But I think the best way to do this, we're going to go from 16th to first. Like I said, I have those
Yep.
records. But I think we need to establish, and I'm sure you can agree with me here, there is a bottom tier of the SEC. And
Oh,
in my
absolutely. There's
opinion,
no question.
that's Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and South Carolina. Those teams, for me, they don't have a chance at making a bowl game. I don't know how you feel exactly about those teams, but we'll start off with 16th. I have Arkansas at 3-9, and when I pull up the schedule here, on my end for them. I have them beating Arkansas Pine Bluff. They lose to Oklahoma State. They beat UAB. But from here, they don't win an SEC game this year. Their wins come against Louisiana Tech, Arkansas Pine Bluff, and UAB. Um, who did you have at 16th? I assume it's probably Vandy.
I had Vandy at 16. Looking at their schedule, non-con is pretty seamless. Virginia Tech opens up the year, so that'll be definitely a tough test. Alcorn State and Georgia State, those should be wins actually on the road against Georgia State at that.
Yep.
I would say their toughest slate would probably come either early in the season where you have at Missouri, Alabama at home, and then at Kentucky. They do have a tough slate right at the end of the season with the at LSU, Tennessee back to back. But I would say that slate where you have Missouri, Alabama, Kentucky, Ball State, and then even Texas added into that mix. Those probably 5 games. You have a bye week mixed in as well. Those are probably going to be the toughest in regards to the slate. I think Vandy's going to have a tough time. I think the big thing about Vandy is they just don't recruit the same compared to some of the other SEC schools in the conference.
It's a shame because Tennessee is a big,
and Nashville's a really
them,
it's a great market. You would think that a lot of guys would want to come to Nashville. It's kind of a growing market, but they're just not, the passion is not there at Vandy. Most Vandy fans when they get into the athletic season, they look towards the spring and get ready for Vandy baseball. So,
right, yeah. Don't forget Sarah Fuller.
Well, and also remember too, they just did renovate their stadium, so maybe they'll bring a little bit of success with that. But that's going to be my number 16 team. I think unfortunately Vandy
3 wins.
I would say 3. Yeah, I mean, looking at their schedule, I mean, they probably lose to VTech. They'll beat Alcorn. They'll beat Georgia State. They'll beat Ball State. They'll beat the teams they need to beat. I would say they're probably a 4-win team. Maybe they'll beat South Carolina. Outside of that, I don't see them winning the other games. At Auburn is going to be a tough test. That's even if Auburn's bad, that's not an easy place to play. So I'm going to probably say like 4 wins is probably a good, respectable spot for them. That's probably about where the most realistic spot is.
Yeah, so I have Vanderbilt in 15th with 4 wins.
Okay.
So yeah, Vandy were only 15th and not 16th because we're doing like full records. I had Vandy and Arkansas both at 0-8. So, but Arkansas is the 16th for me. Vandy 15th. I have them beating Virginia Tech. To me, Virginia Tech are kind of all over the place. They had a lot of turnover in the offseason. I think they're going to struggle. They have a bad defense. So to me, it opens at Vandy. I think they do it. I have Vandy starting 3-0, and then they don't win a game until they play Ball State. So
it could definitely happen. I mean, it's definitely a gauntlet of a schedule. It's not an easy schedule. There are some SEC teams who got more of a benefit of the doubt and may have a bit of an easier slate. But yeah, Vandy's gonna have a tough time. My number 15
about Vandy, sorry. They're running an option offense this year. Mm-hmm. So they're going to catch teams out. I think they can catch Virginia Tech out by running that option offense.
Yeah, absolutely. My number 15, maybe a little bit of a surprise here that they're this slow, but I mean, the schedule is going to be very, very difficult as well. And it's going to be Mississippi State. Okay. I think they're the number 15 team. If you look at their slate as well, non-con is relatively easy. You got, guaranteed wins against UMass. Toledo can be hit or miss, but I think they get the job done there. And then Eastern Kentucky as well, they should be able to win. At Arizona State's going to be an interesting game. That could go either way. You have at Texas, at Georgia, Texas A&M. That's a tough slate. And then right at the end, you got at Tennessee, Missouri, at Ole Miss, obviously for the Egg Bowl. It's not going to be an easy ride for Mississippi State. You got the Gators in there. You have Arkansas. They probably will be competitive in those games. I think they're about probably a 5-win team this season for Mississippi State. 5-6 wins that definitely are on the cusp of getting into a bowl game. But that's where I have Mississippi State at is towards the bottom of the list. I just think they have a pretty tough slate of games, and that's where I think they are going to be finishing up in the SEC.
Yeah. I got them at 5 wins as well, but they're not 15th. 5 wins is good enough to be better than 15th in my book. But I do agree, Vandy, Mississippi State, Arkansas, South Carolina, that kind of feels like the bottom 4. I don't know how you feel about South Carolina or South Carolina or Arkansas just yet, but you know, that's just how I feel. And we're going to be no longer living inside of that house anymore. We've gone back to the bedroom here. If you're watching this on video, that virtual background is just causing problems with the lag right now. So we do apologize for that. Although the people on Spotify, right, we're launching Spotify for this, so
Yep. Yep.
that's going to be real exciting. And if you do want to see our face, go to Spalding Media Network. You'll see us on there. If you see our lovely faces, including Dylan, and you'll see our lovely shirts. We're both wearing USF shirts today. But I've got South Carolina 14th at 4-8. To me, they don't take a big enough step. They lost Xavier Leggett to the Panthers. We all know him as the guy with the funny accent. But to
Mm-hmm.
me, South Carolina, they're a good team. If they're not in the SEC, they're a bowl team. I think we can agree with that for most of the SEC schools. I feel like if you throw Vandy in the American, they're probably a 7-win team, right? So South Carolina, they're starting a freshman at quarterback this year. I don't know how I feel about that. They're inconsistent. The O line isn't very good, and when you're playing great defenses in the SEC, I think that's going to cause problems. So I got South Carolina at 4-8. They win one SEC game. Who did I have that against? That would be good old Vanderbilt. Yeah, good old Vanderbilt. So South Carolina 14th for me.
I have them at 14 as well, man. This is a tough slate. I mean, you look at that middle portion of the schedule: Ole
Mm-hmm.
Miss at Bama at Oklahoma. I mean, geez, they did not get the benefit of the doubt. And then you also start SEC play early compared to a
You
lot of
do,
the other
yeah.
teams at Kentucky versus LSU. It's going to be a tough sled for this team, and I agree. They're probably a 4 to 5 win team. Obviously, you don't know kind of what some of these teams will be like a Texas A&M. You kind of don't know what maybe a Kentucky could be like this year. So I mean, you may be able to sneak in another win there. So I'm going to say like 4 to 5 wins probably is where they're at. I kind of put a lot of the 4 to 5 win teams towards the bottom.
Yeah.
Obviously, once I officially get the actual records out, I will share that with everybody. But yeah, I mean, this is a tough slate, man. This is not going to be easy for South Carolina. It's a team that obviously has lost a little bit as well. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough run for them to try to get bowl eligible this year. I don't see it happening. And even their big rivalry game against Clemson. They're ranked heading into the season, and it's in
Yeah.
Clemson. So I don't see that being a win at
And
all.
I want to
It's
tell you
going to be
about their
tough.
freshman quarterback here, Lenore Sellers. So he's a 3-star quarterback, and he's a freshman. 3-star quarterback freshman starting in the SEC. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, not to say Lenore Sellers couldn't do it. He's 6'3". He's a big guy, but if you're not a 5-star quarterback freshman in the SEC, you're going to have a hard time. So we both agreed on something for once. 13th. This is where I have Mississippi State. So I know you had them 15th. I have them 13th, but I have them at 5-7. So we both had the same record. I think they pull off a couple upsets. That's Arkansas, but that's not really an upset for me because I had Arkansas at 3-9. So Arkansas is their only SEC win for me. I have them going 1-7, but I have them going 4-7 out of conference. That's beating Eastern Kentucky, Arizona State, Toledo, and UMass. I know you mentioned, UMass is an easy win. Toledo, maybe. Arizona State, maybe. It's in Arizona, right? But Mississippi State are just not good enough for me. Their defense isn't good enough. They have a first-year head coach as well. I don't know. Sometimes first-year head coaches can be good. You get a coach
Yeah.
bump. Sometimes it can't be. But I don't necessarily like inconsistencies in the SEC. And I think Mississippi State will be caught up by that. And you agreed with that. You had them 15. So
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good spot. They're definitely one of they're definitely in the bottom half or towards the bottom of the list in most of the, I would say, rankings. That's probably about where I would put them. For my 13, real quick, I'm going to go with Auburn here in this. Auburn's opening schedule is very favorable. Alabama A&M, Cal Bears at home, and then you got New Mexico and Arkansas as well. I mean, those are probably 4 wins right there. This is definitely a team that probably is going to be bowl eligible. This is probably my first bowl eligible team. I think Auburn should find enough strength to be able to get into a bowl game, but that they're definitely not one of these stronger teams right now. I think they're still growing as a club. They can be good if they find a rhythm this season. They
Exactly. Yeah.
can be good, and there's games on this schedule that they can definitely win, like Kentucky, Texas A&M, obviously Vandy, even Oklahoma. Man, Oklahoma at home, tough place to play. That could go either way, depending on how Oklahoma's season is going by then. So I think right. I think 13's about a decent spot for Auburn. I think that's
So
probably where I
so
would put
you
them.
have 3 teams in the SEC not bowl eligible, basically.
As of right now, yes.
Yeah. So I have 4. Well, maybe even 5, but we'll get into that. But yeah, I don't mind I have Auburn at 7-5, so they're a little bit higher up for me. We'll get there. But we kind of basically feel the same way. I mean, there are some games that I feel like could go either way. Um, I don't mind the Auburn. Like, look, Auburn were 6-7 the last 2 years in a row, and we we've been doing these bowl projections for a lot longer than just this show. And I remember you didn't have Auburn making a bowl game 2 years ago, and I thought you were crazy. And you're right. So I should listen to your judgment on Auburn. Basically, that's all I've learned. You understand the iron. Uh, let's go 12. Is this a surprise? Maybe. I don't know how you're going to feel about this. I have Florida at 12, not making a bowl game at 5-7. Look, Florida are the 20th ranked team in FPI on ESPN, but they play Miami, Texas A&M, UCF, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. They're not going to be favored in any of those games. So, like, Graham Mertz, also a QB, he's not the best in the world. Their defense was not very good towards the end of the year. But I have Florida upsetting Miami in week 1. But then I have UCF beating them. I have Kentucky beating them, Texas beating them. I have Florida upsetting LSU. Like, Florida, this is crazy because I have Florida upsetting quite a few teams that's still not good enough to have a 6-6 record. There's a reason why all the sports book have their over under at 5 wins. They're way better than a 5-win team, but
Oh, yeah.
you're literally playing every single good SEC school. So that's why I have them at 12.
I actually have them at 12 too.
Okay.
I I think that Florida is a lot better of a team than they are than they are going to be showing on the field. It's just they got a gauntlet of a schedule. Your last 7 games, you're playing ranked competition as at this point. Your last 5 are against top 15 ranked opponents at this point right now in the season.
Yeah.
And then you also have at Tennessee, which is a number 16th ranked team. You start out with Miami. You have Kentucky. You have Texas A&M at home. Um, I mean, they're probably a 5-win team, maybe. And they beat Sanford. They'll probably beat at Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like your Miami pick. I think they may find that rhythm. I mean,
I
they
think
did that against Utah a
you
few
start
years
good, you're
ago.
at home.
Yeah, they did it that, and week 1's usually kind of a weird
Yep.
opener, and it's at home as you mentioned, so that will definitely help. Man,
But it's like I'm giving Florida some.
it's
Like,
tough.
I have them beating LSU. I have them, beating Miami, and it's still not enough
Even I
because even
mean,
their out of conference
they
games
could
are
definitely
tough.
beat Kentucky. They could definitely
Yeah.
beat Florida State, Georgia. You just don't know. You don't know. It's a non-con game, or not a
Florida,
non-con game.
Texas. You
It's a
don't know
rivalry
that.
game. Yeah, I
Florida,
mean,
Texas never play each
there
other.
are wins available here for
Yeah.
this team. It's just a matter of can they play good enough to do it, and is it going to be too much of a test? That's going to be the big key. So, I agree. I think unfortunately Florida is a lot better
Mm-hmm.
than what the record will show, but it's going to be a tough
Well,
year
they're 20th
right
in
now on
FPI.
paper.
And FPI, for anybody that doesn't follow FPI, like, that's kind of ESPN's main ranking of like a power rank. So they're the 20th power rank, and they might not win more than 4 or 5 games. It's crazy. They got the hardest schedule by far. I think they're only going to be favored in like 3 or 4 games, which is ridiculous. But 11th, we'll go 11th next. That's where I have Auburn. I have them at 7-5. As you mentioned, I have them beating all their out of conference games. I actually realized I have them going 0-4 on the road, apparently. Biggest upset win for Auburn in my book is them beating Texas A&M in Week 13. Put that one down on here. Auburn are very interesting because one thing that caught me off with Auburn is that they had 189 rushing yards a game last year, and they brought both of those running backs back. So this is going to be a team that is lethal on the run. And to me, I looked at some of these matchups. I'm like, okay, well, this team's not that good stopping the run, or they don't have a good pass rush, right? And Auburn is not having to play at Kyle Field when they play A&M towards the end of the year. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of put that in there. But Auburn's kind of that team that's going to have an okay defense. They'll be solid. They'll have a good secondary, and they're just going to run the ball. They'll be very much like myself in college football 25. You run the ball, and you take time off the clock, and you win games. So that's why I got Auburn at 11.
I like that. For me, I have at 11. I have Arkansas, aka Arkansas.
Are you Kansas?
Um, what's up?
Are you Kansas?
Sure. Um, uh, again, a team we kind of talked about a little bit. They'll they're not the best SEC team, but I do think they are going to overperform than where they're at right now. That's kind of my bold prediction.
Okay.
Their opening of their schedule in regards to non-con, pretty reasonable. Louisiana Tech, UAPB, which should be an easy win. UAB, another probably easy win. And then at Oklahoma State, that will probably be their toughest non-con game and arguably one that they may lose. I think this is
I
going to
don't know
be
if
a
it's a
six
may
win.
lose. I think they will lose.
I think they will lose. But I think this is going to be a 5-6 win team, in my
Okay.
opinion.
Can I tell you why I have them at 3 wins?
Why?
That is because their defense is bad. They had a negative point differential last year, and their starting quarterback this year is Taylon Green, who, if you know who that is, he was the transfer from Boise State. In my honest opinion, a Boise State quarterback is not going to be good enough to handle the SEC game in and game out. I don't know if I'm crazy saying that. I don't know where other people have Arkansas. They're already not that great of a team, and
Well,
you're
I mean, we'll
putting.
see, man. I said that about Auburn a few years ago that they
Yeah, and
weren't
like
going
I
to be
said, you're
good,
right about
and they
that.
ended up being not good. So you just don't know.
Yeah,
And especially in this conference, it's a crapshoot, man.
yeah.
Anything could
I
happen.
just don't believe in that kind of quarterback. But then again, Cam Ward wasn't he an FCS quarterback?
Yes.
And yeah, and then now he went to Washington State. Now he's playing for Miami. So I could be wrong there. I probably will be wrong there. But that's why they're 16 for me. All right, number 10. I think now we're at the point where like these are all good teams.
Yes.
So number 10 for me is one of the new teams in the SEC, and it's not Texas. It's Oklahoma. I know you mentioned Oklahoma kind of iffy. I have them at 7-5, going 3-5 in the conference. I have them losing to Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss. I have them losing to Missouri, but I do have Oklahoma beating Alabama in Week 13. Um, Oklahoma are it's kind of hard to say what Oklahoma are because they've been in the Big 12 forever. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with Texas. They don't play this kind of schedule, but
But they do.
they do. But it's an Arkansas situation. I don't trust the quarterback. I don't trust Jackson Arnold. He's an RPO quarterback. He was a 5-star, yes, but I don't necessarily trust a brand new quarterback heading into the SEC on an Oklahoma team that kind of disappointed last year. So that's why I got Oklahoma at 10. I don't know if that's crazy. I don't see them winning more than 9 games. I have them at 7-5, but I'm not going to be stupid and say they're not going to make a bowl game. Like they are going to make a bowl game.
I will say this: their non-con schedule is definitely favorable.
It is, yes.
Temple,
I have them
Houston,
winning every single one
Tulane,
of those.
Maine. I mean that's 4 wins right there. They're going to
Yeah.
beat South Carolina. They're going to beat Auburn.
Yeah.
There's 6.
Yep.
Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee are
The
going to
other
be
win
tough.
I have is against Alabama. I have them losing to LSU, Missouri, and Ole Miss.
And Texas is again a crapshoot.
That could go either way. I just pick Texas. I just think those
Even
better
when
teams.
Texas is bad or Oklahoma is bad, they
Yeah,
somehow find ways to beat each other up.
it's rivalry games. It's this.
Absolutely.
It's like our local war on I-4. Doesn't matter how good
Oh
the
no,
teams
it's
are.
not. That is a completely different
Well,
rivalry.
no,
That's a
no, no.
much
But I'm just
bigger.
saying, it doesn't matter how good one team can be way better than the other. You're always going to have a
Yeah.
good game. That's
Oh,
what I mean by
absolutely,
that.
absolutely.
No, it's not the
My number,
same as the war on I-4.
no, definitely not. My number 10 is going to be Texas A&M. They have again. I'm just basing a lot of this off just their schedule and obviously my knowledge of their team. Texas A&M definitely a favorable non-con for the most part. Although they do start out the year against Notre Dame, that's going to be a tough test. Um, I don't know how that's going to play out. I do
I
think
have
they
them
will
winning.
probably. You think they're going to beat Notre Dame?
I have them winning at Kyle Field. Yeah, it's a tough place to play.
Interesting. I do think Notre Dame will win that game, in my opinion. But they obviously will beat McNeese and Bowling Green and New Mexico State easily. Those should be pretty set in stone wins. But I mean, even some of their games that they have on their schedule, not as bad as some of the other SEC schools. You got at Florida, you got versus Arkansas, at Mississippi State, at South Carolina, at Auburn. This is potentially an 8-win team. Um, I think Texas A&M is in a pretty solid spot. Again, this is where things kind of start getting better.
Yeah. You got them pretty. I mean, I have them a bit higher up on this list for sure. I have them just beating Notre Dame because to me, Notre Dame likes to disappoint on week one when they face good teams, just like
Mm-hmm.
back in the day when they faced Clemson. But either way, number 9 for me is the team in blue, the team with Brock Vandergriff at starting quarterback, none other than Kentucky. Not as good as Hank Bachmeier over there at Wake Forest. But Brock Vandergriff is an exciting quarterback. Now, he's electric in the video game, and I did not base this off of the video game, trust me. But Brock Vandergriff's a great quarterback. Kentucky, they're a good team. They have a good defense. They'll have a couple guys drafted for sure. Deion Walker's going to get drafted, but Brock Vandergriff's a new quarterback, but he's a solid quarterback. And Kentucky, to me, their floor is 6-6. I have them at 7-5. There's not a lot of uncertainty with this team. They had the second best pass rush last year. So I like Kentucky. Do I have them with any upsets? I don't think so. I have them beating Florida. I guess that's kind of an upset. But I have Louisville beating them at the end of the year. So 7-5 for Kentucky. They make the playoffs and go 4-4 in the SEC.
I great minds think alike because I also have Kentucky at 9. They win their non-con games. Southern Miss, easy win. Ohio should be an easy win. Murray State, they'll definitely beat. In regards to their in-conference, they'll beat Vandy. They'll beat Auburn. I think they will beat Florida, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They should beat South Carolina. This is probably a 6 to 7 win team. They could upset Louisville, given that it's a rivalry game. That's probably my only kind of upset. But again, Louisville may be down and depleted by then, so you kind of just don't know. So
Yeah, is
that's
that an
where I'm
upset?
gonna go. What's up?
Is that even an upset right now?
Yeah, I mean they're ranked. They're 21st.
Well, the rankings aren't out yet, so.
Well, this is what I got right now for the
Okay.
rankings. So this is probably whatever was last at this point. So, but nevertheless, I do think that Kentucky definitely has a shot to be a 7-win team. I think their ceiling is probably at 7, maybe 8 if you get really lucky. But I would think their probably floor would be like 5
I'm
wins.
not ready to
4
say
wins.
8 just yet for them.
They're a 4 to 5 win team at the lowest of their floor.
Yeah, I think the lowest is they are 6-6. Yeah, Louisville. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, FPI Louisville's at 21. You might just be looking at an FPI list, but yeah, you're right. So Louisville, it is in Kentucky though, but Louisville's also in Kentucky. So just want to point that out there. We're now heading into the top half of the conference. 8th for me is a team that you had in 10th. That is Texas A&M. You talked about them quite a bit. Like I said, I got them beating Notre Dame. I got them at 8 wins. They go 5-3 in the conference. To me, Texas A&M, they're an exciting team. The one thing about Texas A&M, you know who their head coach is? Mike Elko, former Duke man. Don't forget, this team is paying $75 million to not have Jimbo Fisher be the head coach of this football program. You got to be confident that you're bringing in a head coach if you're paying $75 million not to have Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher was disappointed for the most part. So Mike Elko comes in, brand new head coach from Duke. Duke were great last year with Riley Leonard, who is off to Notre Dame now, their quarterback. So Duke is a shell of their former self. But this Texas A&M is going to be the SEC version of Duke, and I think that's very exciting. And Daniel Jones also likes that. But
Yeah.
Mike Elko, I believe in Mike Elko. They have a great defense. They have an insane defensive end transfer from Bowling Green, who is going to be expected to take that big step. But yeah, to me, this is basically just you have a good head coach coming in. I think he'll clean up Jimbo's mess because Texas A&M always has a great roster. They're kind of like Miami. But yeah, Mike Elko to me is going to win Coach of the Year. He's going to turn this program around, and I got Texas A&M in 8th.
My 8th is going to be Tennessee, the Volunteers. They got an interesting slate on the schedule. The Vols obviously had that really good season 2 years ago, and I've kind of slowed down a little bit, especially last season. Although they were still
Hendon
pretty
Hooker and things go south.
Yeah, although they still had their moments last year. Their schedule isn't that difficult. If you look at it on paper, you got NC State early in the season. That'll be a tough test in non-con action. But I mean, you got Chattanooga, Kent State, and UTEP for their other non-con games. They should win all those, all at home. Those should be pretty seamless victories for them. In regards to other games, at Oklahoma, that could go either way. I do see probably Oklahoma winning that game, though. That's going to be a tough place to play. Florida, they should win that game. But I mean, their schedule is relatively reasonable. I would say they're a 7-win team, 8-win team, somewhere in that ballpark. So I'm going to go with Tennessee. At number 8, I think they have a solid year. They'll definitely be bowl eligible. So I don't see any problem with that.
I'm a lot higher on Tennessee than you are. I've noticed I'm a lot higher than you on a lot of these teams. So I'm very interested to see kind of what your top looks like. Number 7, I don't know how I feel about this because this is kind of my favorite SEC team heading into the year. But let me just say this. Teams 7, 6, 5, 4, and 3 in my book all had the same record. So you can interchange 7 through 3, basically. I don't even know. I think it's just based on head-to-head record how I got this. But yeah, 7, 6, 5, 4, and 3 are all the same records. So don't be offended if the team that I have at 7, they're the same as 3. It's just I don't know how this works. But at 7, I have the team from Mississippi, Ole Miss, the Ole Miss Rebels. Let me tell you about this team. I took them to a college football playoff in NCAA 25. This Ole Miss team is super exciting. Jackson Dart is headed off to the NFL next year. So this is Jackson Dart. This is his last chance, right? They have a great defense. They got Lane Kiffin, but the offensive line was ranked 105th. And you're not going anywhere. I think Ole Miss ended last year like the 5 seed or something, 9 seed, wherever it was. But Ole Miss kind of have everything set. It's just if they can win the games now. They have the offense. They have the weapons. They're going to have like 5 guys get drafted next year in the first round or 2. So, like, Ole Miss has everything that they need.
Mm-hmm.
If the offensive line doesn't get better, they're not going anywhere. So, I have Ole Miss at 7th. I think that is a good spot for them. I have them beating every team except LSU and Georgia.
I like it. My number 7 is the Oklahoma Sooners, one of the new teams in the SEC. I do think Oklahoma's a 7 to 8 win team in that ballpark. That's kind of why I have them here in this spot. This is kind of like, again, my 7-8 win teams are kind of over being a bowl eligible team, like just on the cusp. But they're definitely not going to be like a 10-win team or battling for 10 wins. They definitely, again, their non-con schedule, we kind of talked about this earlier, that's going to give them 4 wins easily. I mean, they should win all those. I mean, I think maybe Houston may give them a bit of a tough test, but I think outside of that,
Tulane's better than Houston.
Tulane, though, I think is better than Houston. I agree with that. But I do think they win all 4. And then I do think they win games against like South Carolina, They should win against Auburn. It could go either way, but I do think that Oklahoma is going to be my 7 team. I do think they win at least probably 7. I think they do have a ceiling of maybe like 5 wins, 5 or 6. But I do think they're a 7-win, 8-win team, in my opinion.
A floor of 5 or 6
A
wins.
floor, yeah,
Yes,
a
I
floor.
don't
My
see
bad.
them like not making a bowl game at
Oh,
all.
absolutely no.
I
They're
mean, I
going to make
had
a
them
bowl.
10th, but that was at 7-5. Because you got to remember with the SEC that the records are inflated. Because with
Mm-hmm.
SEC, you pretty much always win your out of conference games. Like even the teams that are only going to win one game in the SEC this year, like they're still going to have 4 wins because
Oh, absolutely.
they'll beat that. So that's why my records are kind of inflated. Like my eighth best team has 8 wins compared to you're kind of just now getting into that 8-win territory. Um, but yeah, I mean, I didn't feel that different about Oklahoma. I had them 10th. But really, we've only agreed on what Kentucky so far.
Yep.
Kentucky and Florida. Yeah. All right, top 6. So this team also has the same record as Ole Miss. So like I said, you could put Ole Miss at 6th if you want. But I have Missouri, the Missouri Tigers.
Ooh.
Now, what's really interesting about Missouri is that they were good last year. They retain all that talent, and this is actually the most veteran team in the SEC. They got the most seniors in the SEC. They got the most juniors in the SEC. So they're already a talented team. They don't make a ton of mistakes. They're good. Their defense is great, and they have a team full of veterans. So to me,
And
this
it's arguably one of the most easiest
it
schedules in the
is in
SEC.
fact the easiest schedule. They really only play Alabama, and that's about it. Because you could, I have
And
them beating.
Oklahoma, but that's at
Yeah,
home,
I
fortunately.
have them beating Oklahoma. I have them losing to Texas A&M, and I have them losing to Alabama. So I got them at 10 wins. So like this, you mix in a veteran team that's good and an easy schedule. It's kind of up to them to not make the playoffs. I feel
I
like
agree.
now, like for me, that Ole Miss, that 7 from Ole Miss up, this is all playoff contenders. I don't know. You don't have Oklahoma as your playoff contender at 7, do you?
No.
No.
I
So
definitely the rest of the way going forward, I have
yeah,
at playoff
so you
contenders.
got 6 for playoff contenders. I got 7 because I threw Ole Miss in there. So Missouri, like they should make the playoffs if they do what they're supposed to,
Yeah.
and that's
I
win
have
9 games.
LSU at 6.
Okay.
I think losing Jaden Daniels will definitely be a big change. Losing somebody like that, obviously LSU has done a good job of being able to find ways to kind of reinvent themselves after losing big name quarterbacks into the
Hmm.
draft. Um, Overall, their schedule is starts out pretty reasonable. USC to open up the year, kind of ironic. Both teams lost their starting quarterback to the draft, and they both got drafted
Well,
like
LSU
basically
lost
reserve.
Malik Neighbors too, who was one of the
Then
best
that too.
receivers in football.
But I do think they will beat USC to open the year, and then you have Nichols, which should be a win. UCLA is also on the schedule. That should also be a win as well. South Alabama at South Carolina. So I mean that's 5. I think 5-0 is a reasonable place to put them early. Um, this is definitely an 8-win, 9-win team. They can definitely break 10. I definitely think they could do that. But I'm gonna go with like an 8-9 win team. I think 9 is their ceiling. I would say 8 is probably their floor. This is going to be a pretty good LSU team. They're still a really solid program, and they're going to be competitive again this year.
I actually have them starting 6-0, yeah, and then
Yeah,
they kind of lose some games from there, like Florida later on. I do feel the same way about LSU. I think, like I said, my 7 through 3 are all the same record. So just because I didn't have, just I might have a team at 4 or 3. They're the same record as Ole Miss at 7. These guys are all the same record, so they're interchangeable. So number 5, you mentioned them earlier at 8. I've got Tennessee. They got the Volunteers. Um, they don't have Hendon Hooker anymore. I know you mentioned that, but what they do have is James Pierce, who is going to be the maybe number 1 overall pick next year. I think some people have Shadur Sanders up there now. James Pierce is the best edge pass rusher in the nation. He's the second best player in college behind maybe Travis Hunter. But that's if you agree on that. So Tennessee are going to have a brutal defense to face against. They're going to have sacks left and right when you face Tennessee. And their quarterback from this year is a 5-star quarterback, Nico Lemalev. I don't know how to say his name. We'll just call him Nico. He's a 5-star quarterback. He's coming in as a redshirt freshman. He played the Citrus Bowl against Iowa last year and dominated. So there is just so much upside on this offense that I love about Tennessee. They're already a great defense. Their defensive line is the best in the nation with James Pierce, who is probably, in my opinion, number one overall pick next year. So Tennessee, I have them losing to Alabama and Georgia, which are probably the games you'd expect them. I have them winning every other game. 10 wins for Tennessee in fifth. Like I said, that could be seventh, that could be third. They're all the same record.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. My number 5 team is going to be the Missouri Tigers. This is a 10-win football team to me. They, as you mentioned, they run they run the table. I mean, with their schedule, they have a really easy start to the season. They could arguably win all 7 games to open the year. They could be 7-0 by the end of.
I had them 6-1 because
By
they
towards
lose to A&M.
I mean, but they could win all 7 of those.
They
I mean,
could.
it's not unheard of. Alabama will be their first real test. Oklahoma, I think, will be tough, but it is at home. That's a positive. I mean, this is a
Such an easy
really
schedule.
favorable.
Look
Yeah,
at they
it's
end
so
South
easy.
Carolina, Mississippi State, Arkansas, which is that bottom tier of the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, and then they're non-cons: Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and at UMass. How the heck they're at UMass is beyond me. I don't get that whatsoever. And by the way, just speaking of UMass, their non-con schedule, I feel awful for. I mean, obviously they're an independent, but they have 3 SEC schools on their schedule in Missouri, Mississippi State, and Georgia. That's rough. That is rough.
Who's the team that every year?
UMass ain't joking around this year.
Yeah, who's it every year? The team that schedules they play like Penn State and like Texas. Who are they? They just do it for the money every single year.
UConn schedules a lot of that. UConn has Maryland, Duke, Wake Forest, Syracuse this year as well.
Yeah, maybe them. Yeah, I agree. Missouri, they're a 10-win football team for me. That's exactly what I have them. I just had them in 6, but as I mentioned, that could be 5th. They're all the same record to me. 4th place is also at 10 wins, and that same thing. Don't want to talk about it anymore. That's LSU. So you mentioned it. I'll kind of dive a bit deeper into LSU here, and here's the upside for LSU, right? They had the best offense in college football last year, but I do not expect that to happen again. Like you said, they don't have Jaden Daniels anymore. They don't have Malik Neighbors. Nussmeier comes in at quarterback. He's good. He's a bit one-dimensional, but I also believe Brian Kelly. The biggest thing for LSU is their defense. It's what let them down last year. If you have the best offense in the nation, you should probably be in the playoffs, right? But they weren't because the defense let them down. Whenever the offense wouldn't get going, you can't ask for the offense to score 40 every game. That's the UCF problem. That's the Colorado problem from last year. Like the Colorado won that first game like 52-50 against TCU.
Yep.
You can't have that. But for LSU, I think things are good for them. Their over-unders at 8.5. I have them in 10. I have them losing to Alabama and Florida back-to-back, actually. So I got them winning big games. I got them beating Oklahoma, A&M. I got them beating Ole Miss. That's at home. I think that could be expected, LSU at home. I have them beating both the new Big Ten teams. That's USC and UCLA. They're out of conferences. I know you like them. That's why you had them at 6. So I got them at 4, but they're same record. They could be 6. LSU, it's exciting when the team in purple and yellow are good, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My number 4 is Alabama.
Oh, okay.
The no longer Nick Saban run Alabama. Their non-con schedule is not that easy. Western Kentucky to open the year. They should win that game, although I do think Western Kentucky could give them a run for their money a little bit. USF. Obviously, we're both wearing USF shirts right now, but I really think that game could be fun. That game.
Let me check the line on that game right now.
What?
Let me check the line on that game while you're talking.
That game could be one of the more intriguing matchups in regards to early season potential upsets. I mean, USF was close last year. They were very close to beating Alabama.
It was also a rain game.
It was a little bit of a rain game, but still think that there's a chance we could see uh, potential for some magic. And Byron Brown is a very good quarterback. Alex
And
Golich knows what
yeah,
it takes to beat Alabama.
we're certainly going to be talking when we have our group of 5 episode, when we talk about maybe the 20 teams or so that could make the playoffs.
USF is definitely one of them.
USF is in there for me because they have a chance of winning the American, in my
They do.
opinion.
At Wisconsin is going to be really tough.
Yeah,
That's going to be a really
it's gonna
fun
be tough.
matchup. And then obviously you have Mercer. That should be an easy win. Really, I mean, outside of the first 3 weeks, then that's when things get tougher. You know, you got Georgia to open conference play. I think it's a positive they get that over with because then they could kind of focus more on the rest of the schedule because that's going to be arguably one of the biggest hyped games for the season. And I think that's going to be really the big test of where Alabama is. Are they a team that's going to be battling for a spot in the playoffs? Are they going to be a team that's just kind of there? I mean, Alabama's in a different spot. No Nick Saban. It's the first year of the non-Nick Saban era, so we'll see. There's a lot of intrigue, but I do think Alabama will be good. I think they're going to be battling for a spot in the college football playoff, whether that be a at-large bid. I'm not too sure, but I do think they're definitely going to be competitive enough to make it to the college football playoff. But I do think this is about a 9-win team, a 9 to 10 win team.
Well, let's keep talking about Bama here because you have them at 4, so I'll transition because I have them at 3. But once again,
Okay.
they're the same record as 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I have Alabama as from 3 to 7. They're just at 3 because I think they win some tiebreaker games. But I think Kalen DeBoer is a good coach, right? Mm-hmm. You don't take Washington to the national championship if you're not a good head coach.
I agree.
You can agree with me there. So, DeBoer is taking over a better team than Washington. Can we agree with that?
I agree. No, I agree.
So, who's to say he's how? Yes, it is a step down from Alabama, but it's not a step down for Kalen DeBoer, who took Washington to the national championship last year and lost to Michigan, as we all know, with Michael Penix Jr., who just has the best name in college football. Not anymore. He's off to the NFL to do great things. But the Alabama head coach, that was kind of the big question mark all off season, and ended up being Kalen. And Bama still has a great defense. Jalen Milroe. It seems like people are on the fence if he's a good quarterback or not. He hasn't shown anything to me that shows that he's not a good quarterback. And how often, even when Alabama don't have fantastic quarterbacks, they're good. Now, not to say A.J. McCarron is not a good quarterback, but we know how he turned out in the NFL. We know how a lot, Mac Jones. We know how a lot of Alabama quarterbacks turn out in the NFL. So, it doesn't matter who it is. They always seem to have a good quarterback. And Milroe is someone that could win the Heisman for me. So I think you add in the fact that they have a great defense, right? They have a great offensive line. Jalen Milroe is a good quarterback. They have some great receivers. They always have big guys. And Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. He's not Nick Saban. He doesn't have to be Nick Saban. But I have them at 10 wins. I think the reason I don't have them in the SEC championship is because I think I had them losing to one of those teams. I had them – actually, do Alabama even play Texas? Yeah, they played – I have Alabama beating Georgia, actually. But they're 7-1. I talked to you this pre-show. I have Wisconsin beating Alabama week 3. We talked about it for a little bit earlier in the day, but I like Wisconsin at home. I think not every team that's favored is going to win, and so I have Wisconsin beating Alabama, and then that very next week I have Alabama beating Georgia. But it's still not good enough for Alabama to get into the conference championship. For me, what losses do you think Alabama have on the year?
I mean, definitely Georgia.
See, I go Alabama obviously. There. It's at home. It's in Bama.
I definitely still think they're going to lose to Georgia.
Okay. That'll be a fun one to watch. Week 5. We'll do our Week 5 show.
It is good, though, Alabama gets that game out of the way, because if they do lose that game, then things kind of...
I do think things could go south for Alabama if they do somehow get upset by USF, and then Wisconsin go and beat them, and then Georgia beat them. All of a sudden, you're 1-3 to start the year. And who knows? They're not losing to Vandy or South Carolina, but you could lose to Tennessee and Missouri and LSU. It's
Mhm.
not an easy schedule for Alabama this
No,
year.
no,
But
absolutely not.
who's your number
Uh,
three? Who do you got? You got Georgia, Texas, and Ole Miss left. So
Ole Miss is my number 3.
okay,
I think that's probably. I think I'm shooting very high with Jackson Dart this year.
yeah,
I do think Jackson
I
Dart's
like it.
gonna have a really good season. I think there's a chance that they could start 4-0.
I have
It's
them starting 6-0. So
Yeah, this is a team that I'm very excited to see. I think they're going to be very competitive. Their schedule is pretty favorable. At LSU will be probably their toughest game, but they're at home against Oklahoma and Georgia. They're at home against Kentucky, on the road against Arkansas, on the road against Florida. This is a very favorable schedule for Ole Miss. I like them a lot, winning 10 games.
I have them at 10 wins. Yes. Um, like I said, Ole
And
Miss could also
the
be 3 for
playoffs.
me because they're the same record. So we kind of feel the same about Ole Miss. I have them at 10 wins. They're anywhere from 7-3 for me.
Mm-hmm.
Playing with them on the game, like I said, I can say that yes, the offensive line is the 105th. Like the offensive line is absolutely terrible for Ole Miss. They have to be better there, but they have all the skill positions to be good. And yeah, Lane Kiffin. I don't know. Do you believe in Lane Kiffin? He's
I
kind of
do.
Scott Frost to me. I don't know how I feel about Lane Kiffin. So we both have Georgia and Texas. So we both have Georgia and Texas. Do you have Georgia like? To me, they're both the same record. I don't know. Do you have them both the same record, or because we'll kind of say like who's going to win the game? Because we both have Georgia and Texas in the
Yeah.
SEC championship.
I think Texas is a 10 to 11 win team. I think their only loss, geez, and they play Georgia too. I think they're a 10-win team. I think they lose to Georgia and they lose to Michigan.
I have them beating Michigan. Let me tell you why. Because Michigan have a brand new head coach, and Michigan don't have a quarterback.
But they're at home. I think they lose to Michigan.
I don't. I think Texas are just so much better of a team than Michigan. Like Michigan have a good chance of going like 7-5 this year. Like
They definitely lose to Georgia in the middle of the season.
I have them losing to Georgia. Yes, even though it's in Texas.
They lose to Georgia.
Yeah, I have that as well. So you have Georgia winning again in the SEC championship.
I have them at number 1, man. I think
Okay.
Georgia's the best team in in the SEC. Although their schedule is tough, I do think they find a way.
Okay. So I have Texas and Georgia at 11-1. I have Texas losing to Georgia, and then as I mentioned earlier, I have Georgia losing to Alabama in Week 5.
Mm-hmm.
Because look, you're not going to go 12-0 in the SEC. It's just not possible.
No, it's not going to happen this year.
So who do you have Georgia losing to?
You don't need to. You're still going to make the playoffs. With the 12-team playoff, you don't need to go undefeated anymore. It's not a requirement.
And there's shouts that people are saying Florida can go 8-4 and they'll make the playoffs just because they're scheduled.
It's possible. I mean, it depends on who they beat too.
Yeah.
Those type of teams that make it as at-large teams, it will matter who they beat, right? But if you're a conference champion, it doesn't matter if you go. Those at-large bids will matter if you're a Power 5 team.
Yeah.
And you beat like the quality team.
Because like
really
Georgia
get interesting.
Georgia and Texas, like the winner of that game is probably going to be the 1 seed, but then the loser is probably going to be the 5 seed. So
I agree.
Like it's not even that big. And then like I have Alabama, LSU, all those 10-win teams could easily be like the 7, 8. Like the SEC could have 5 teams.
No, absolutely. But you're definitely having your conference winner, and then you're probably going to have 3 or 4 teams probably.
If you're a 9-win team in the SEC, you're probably in over a 10-win team.
This is who I think will be in. It's Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, and I think Missouri makes it in. I really do.
And we'll go through this when we do the predictions because we have to go through all the other conferences first. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just in terms of teams that are winning 9 games, I have 7 of them. So you could argue that I have like 7 that could potentially be in the hunt.
I don't see Auburn making it in.
No, Auburn's not making it in. They're 7-5.
Well, yeah, I get that.
Where do you throw Auburn in there for?
I never threw Auburn in there. What are you talking about?
I think you just said Auburn aren't making the playoffs.
No, I said I don't see everybody making it. Like I don't see like all those 9-win teams making it in.
But there is an argument like if you're a 9-win SEC school, well, you can be the 12th seed.
Yeah, but there's gonna be other teams that are gonna be.
There will be. We'll go. But I'll ask you for the 4th time. Who do you have Georgia losing to? You said they're not going undefeated.
Jeez, I mean,
Did they lose to Clemson week 1 in Atlanta?
no, they're gonna win. They're gonna win. They're gonna win every game.
Okay, well, you just said there won't be an undefeated team in the
I'm
SEC.
just. I never. I said
Look,
that you don't need to be undefeated
I
to
know.
be in the
Look,
playoffs, to be the number one
they
seed.
will lose a game. You play Ole Miss on the road. You play Texas on the road. You
I don't
play
think they're going to
Alabama.
lose a game.
You'll lose a game.
They'll win every game. They're going to go undefeated.
What are the odds on that?
Well, that's my prediction.
That's the first of many Dylan predictions here. Well, they're 14-point favorites against. You know what? You're probably right. They are favored to win every single game.
Ole Miss might be the tough. Oh, Texas is probably the toughest game, and Texas is gonna lose that game.
Well, yeah, you're right. I have Alabama beating Georgia.
That would be their only loss is against Texas. They're gonna beat Ole Miss.
What is it about Texas that makes you think that they could beat them over Alabama?
What do you mean? Texas beating Georgia over Alabama beating Georgia? Because I think Texas is actually they got Quinn Ewers, and it's too early in the season for Bama.
It's week 5.
Yeah, but they play they're gonna be beat up by the time they head into week 5.
Looking at the odds here, so to go undefeated, Georgia are plus 300 for yes. They actually have the best chance to go undefeated behind Notre Dame. Notre Dame have the best
I will
chance.
take that bet any day.
We'll go right ahead. It's on the Hard Rock app here for Florida. Plus 300. You bet 10, that wins you 30. I will not be making that bet, just like I'm not going to bet on my predictions because Dylan's usually better at the predictions. So if you are going to make a bet, which we recommend you don't do, you go with Dylan. Have Georgia and Texas and Ole Miss. Make sure you have Vandy as the worst team. Otherwise, we agreed on quite a few. I think, we talked about who kind of the power tiers are. I think we agreed the SEC is the best conference for sure. Them in the Big Ten. But I will ask this before we sign off. What team do you have that aren't in those top teams, like your top 7, that you could see? Because this happens every year, right? What one of those teams do you have from 8 to 16 pull up with 9, 10 wins and make the playoffs?
Texas A&M.
I'd have to agree because I think it could be Florida as well.
I don't see Florida. It's too tough of a schedule. They're going to get beat up. They're going to get beat up this year. Texas A&M is I think the most favorable. They got a schedule that's reasonable in it's grounded in actually being able to maybe actually get through it. I think Texas A&M has the best shot in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I agree with that because they are 8th for me. I'd say for me, it's probably Florida, maybe Auburn, maybe Oklahoma. I don't feel as good with me putting Arkansas as the worst team anymore.
I think the top 10 teams are probably the best bet of having a chance making the playoffs. Everybody else towards the bottom, I don't see it. Yeah. They'll make bowl games, but I just don't see it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just waiting for the year that Vandy win more than 3 or 4 games.
You do it in college football for 25. So
it could be this year. It's either this year or it's on the video game.
It's on the video game. So.
Yeah. Shout out to Sam Houston State, who went 7-5 in their first year on my Marshall franchise. We took Marshall to the Sun Belt. We beat App State, and we did not make the playoffs. They gave it to Liberty instead, who got killed by Georgia. Good riddance. Would you like to sign us off here?
Yes, sir. What will be our next show? I guess we're doing Big Ten next.
I've got the predictions for the Big 12. I don't know if you want to do that one next.
Let's do Big 10 next. I like.
Okay, we'll do Big 10. We'll bring that to you at another later in the week, maybe.
Yep.
But yeah, I like that. Big 10's probably the next best conference.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, appreciate everybody joining us here on the Campus Chronicles podcast. We're actually going to close out right at an hour because that is, I think, as perfect as you possibly can. So we got about 50 seconds. Obviously, this could be a fun conference to cover and keep an eye on. We'll do the Big 10. We'll do the Big 12. We'll do the ACC.
And
We'll do some of the Group of 5.
Yep.
And also the PAC and the Independents added in as well because obviously those two are kind of just their own thing. So, yeah, should be good.
Projections. Right,
we'll do bowl projections as well. Yep, we'll have weekly shows. We'll do talk about the schedule and such. So it should be good. So that being said, myself, Dylan Spalding, my partner in crime, Chris Everidge, thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys next time for the Big Ten preview show to talk all things Big Ten football. See you next time, guys. Peace.